Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Women in Motorsports. Joe Samdiego here, along with Daniel Zeri from Racers, the girls behind the helmet. And Daniel, once again, shortly before we go on the air, big breaking news. And again, it involves F1 Academy. Now, the newest driver to join in, and it's a big name for folks that were familiar with the W Series, Neria Marti. She's going to be with Campos Racing for the F1 Academy. Daniel, how huge is this? I guess not only for Neria because F1 Academy, but now for F1 Academy themselves. This is one of the big names that was coming from the W Series that we saw as a contender for wins.
Oh yes, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. As you mentioned, Joe, another very big name for F1 Academy now announced on the for the inaugural season. It's Neria Martin, a driver that, as you mentioned, was quite in contention for victories and for certainly for podiums in W Series. Scored 3 podiums in her 2 seasons in the All-Female Championship W Series. It's quite a big name. It's very important for the championship, very important for Nerea herself, of course, for her racing career to continue on the path of single seaters, because also last year, together with W Series, she also contested in her first season in touring cars in a factory team with BMW Spain. When she won the championship at debut in the Spanish Endurance Championship. So a driver that really has been racing both in touring cars and in single seaters, and it's important that she's also staying in W Series, as we see here now the announcement for Spanish team Campos. Campos is an important team in Formula 4 because they've been very competitive in the Spanish Championship, where last year they won the championship in the first year where the Spanish series switched to the new Tatus car. So that's really important for Nerea to coming into the season, knowing that she can rely on the expertise of a team like Campos Racing. And also, interestingly, it's a team that has historically provided opportunity to female drivers on the single seater ladder. For example, we can remember Sophia Flörsch. She raced in FIA Formula 3 in 2020 with Campos Racing. But also other female drivers have raced in what was GP3 that then was rebranded as FIA Formula 3. Most of them raced for Campos, so it's also cool to see that a team like Campos continuing to provide good opportunities to female drivers. And for Nerea, it's going to be her second year in Formula 4, because after karting, she was a very big name in Spanish karting. She won the Valencian Championship in 2018 and was second in the National Championship in 2018. And then in 2019, she switched to single seaters. Spanish Formula 4, she was straight on the podium, second in a very first round in Navarra in 2019, and then had a very solid season with a lot of top 10 finishes. And towards the end of the season, she was close to the top 5. Then straight from there, she went into the W Series. So she only has one season under her belt in Formula 4, and it's another car, because it was the previous generation Tatus Formula 4 car. But as I said, I think they will also have a good testing program in order to familiarize with the new car. She's the 4th driver, and 1 per team. So far, we've had a driver confirmed at ART Grand Prix. Lina Bula was the very first one to be announced. Then we had the Bianca Bustamante the day after for Prema Racing. Then yesterday, after a week, we had our 3rd driver being announced, Jessica Edgar for Carlin, Rodin Carlin. As we see now, Jessica, she's the cousin of FIA Formula 3 driver Johnny Edgar. And also comes from a family with pretty big motorsport heritage, because a lot of in her family were racing at high level in British karting. And so last year, Jessica raced in the GB4 Championship, which is a championship that started just last year, and they were racing with the older generation Tatus Formula 4 car. She also had a podium. She was second at Alton Park, and then had some other top 5 finishes, 2 top P4 if I'm not mistaken. And now she is stepping up to F1 Academy. She's the youngest driver to be announced on the grid. She's 19, while Nerea is Jessica is 17. And then we have Bianca Bustamante at 18, and then we have Nerea at 21. And Lida Buller 25. So these are the 4 drivers that so far we have announced. Probably the only team that hasn't announced a driver so far is MP Motorsport. So possibly the next one is going to be for the Dutch team.
Daniel, as you mentioned, MP Motors, they haven't announced anybody. It's a Dutch team. Starting to wonder, we're seeing how Bianca Bustamante, okay, she has their experience in in W Series. Then we got recently Nir Marti. One has to think, Nir Marti, pretty big name from the W Series. You got a Dutch team coming up. Could we potentially see maybe a driver like Bicycle Visser, who was a championship contender in the W Series, be sort of making that next switch over? Because it seems like this is all sort of leading up from, a name we've all heard of, a contender, and now just getting a bigger name. Do you think we're seeing that sort of a pattern? And is that something we're just believe that's being done on purpose? Or is this just the timing of the teams as they're making deals with the drivers?
That's an interesting question. Bicycle could be a cool driver, even though she is a bit senior, I would say, probably for F1 Academy, because she has a lot of experience also in bigger single seaters. She was racing some years ago in the Formula Renault 3.5. She also did the GP3, which was, as I mentioned, then rebranded FIA Formula 3. Then she raced in GT cars, and then she came back to W Series, but at this point in her career, I think it's a little bit more she's more senior driver compared to some of the others that we've seen announced now. But nothing. We could probably see a Bicycle there. That's not something that I completely rule out. Also, WC last year had another Dutch driver, a younger one. That is currently racing for MP Motorsport in the Formula 4 UAE. So that's also maybe something that could be interesting. But nationality, doesn't mean much. But coming to the second part of your question, I think so far we had some drivers that already sealed the deals. And probably the championship itself decided to announce one driver per team, possibly, and then on this second round of announcements, possibly we will see just drivers sealing the deals and then being announced. Even though, because they will also have to announce the calendar, which is still to be confirmed, and the testing program, because for the initial launch press release, that they said that they will have 15 testing days. So also that takes time. So we will probably see news from the calendar and testing days, and more drivers coming up in the next couple of weeks, I believe.
Next couple of weeks, it's going to be very exciting. It just seems like the last couple of times we've been coming on the air, we've been getting an announcement of another driver. For folks just joining us, Nir Marti and Jessica Edgar, the newest drivers in F1 Academy. Of course, with that, it means Nir Marti, if the W Series returns back, most likely will not be there. I find it very hard for any driver to do double both series at the same time. Overall, when it comes to the shaping up of F1 Academy, and especially now that we're seeing the team aspect, something we hadn't seen in the W Series, do you feel there's a team so far with the 4 drivers that might have a little bit of an upper hand because they might have a little bit more of the better equipment and a driver that would be suited for them? Or even if it's a rookie, younger driver, but they have the mechanical expertise, do you see any team so far with the upper hand?
No, so far I think Lena Buller has quite a lot of experience in the bigger cars with the Formula 3 regional of the European Championship. But the same goes for Nerea Marti. She also has 2 years under her belt in the W Series, which used the same cars. So I think probably so far they are the most experienced ones. Bianca Bustamante is doing quite well in the Formula 4 UAE, so she's coming up to speed quite quickly with Prema and with that Tatu's Formula 4 car. So that's she's having a lot of track time now in that championship. So that also could mean something. And Jessica Edgar, for example, she raced in GB4. We don't know if she tested. Possibly she tested with Carlin. But Carlin also is quite a big team with a lot of experience, and also they did extremely well last year in the British Formula 4 in the same cars, winning the championship, both the teams and drivers championship. So far, I wouldn't say that we have a team or a driver having the upper hand, but as for their curricula, they would, for the CVs, I would say that Nerea and Lena have the biggest experience in so far.
Definitely, those two, the experience that they got, and then it's really interesting, especially with Bianca as she's coming up. I think a lot of folks will be pleasantly surprised to see how she could step up her game in F1 Academy in 2023. Daniel, one of the main original stories we were going to report on that got a lot of us excited about was Katherine Legge. She is coming back home to Indiana for the Indianapolis 500. And this was a really exciting news to hear because she's coming back with Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing. That team, they know how to get it done at Indianapolis. Takuma Sato has won there with the team. Of course, a lot of folks remember Buddy Rice and Danica Patrick when she made herself a big name in motorsports when she was leading the Indianapolis 500 while driving for Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing. When it comes to Katherine Legge, Daniel, we know her experience. Sports car racing. She's done the Indianapolis 500 before, INDYCAR before. Been almost about a decade with her outside of INDYCAR. Do you feel this is something where, as a driver, especially, she's still doing a lot of sports car driving? She was in the Rolex 24. Is this something where you're going back to an IndyCar? Yes, it has changed over 10 years. Does that sort of minimize the learning curve, or is this still going to be almost like being a rookie again, considering the changes to the cars and the way the race essentially has been going now with these newer cars and the engines and everything?
I think, first of all, it's massive news for Katherine. She was fourth just a couple of weeks ago at the Rolex 24 Hour of Daytona, as you mentioned, the big name in IMSA. She's raced it all from DTM to Formula E to any championship that you can name of. Probably Katherine Legge has raced in it at one point in her career. IndyCar 10 years ago, last year I believe it was 2013 when she last raced in IndyCar. So it is probably going to be a bit of a rookie coming back into that car. She has raced in the DW12 car though, which is quite similar, obviously from this one, but the air screen will be a new thing to her. So also how the air moves around it. So I think that changed a little bit the dynamics of the car since she last raced in IndyCar. So I believe she will have to adapt a little bit. So that is going to be an important point to watch. But the team, as you mentioned, it's pretty good team. So I think there's nothing. There's no better team that for her to come back after 10 years out of the sport and to try to get up to speed again at Indianapolis. She did 2 Indianapolis 500, 2012 and 2013. But neither of them was in particularly competitive equipment. So this one is going to be possibly the first time that she has a decent opportunity at Indianapolis, and it's really, really good to see for female drivers, because in the last couple of years we have the Simona Di Silvestro in the Paretta Autosport entry in 2021, but prior to that, we had not many female drivers racing at the Indianapolis 500 since 2020. So it's great to see Katherine Legge back at the greatest spectacle in racing.
Definitely excited to see her back. And as you mentioned, we've had a couple of Indianapolis 500s where there was no female racers, where before it was always, it almost felt like it was a guarantee that you will see one, maybe two each year. And of course, when Danica was there, brought in a lot of fans. Katherine Legge, if she was to have a good race, I think that would just get a lot of fans again excited and just remembering, because we know there's a lot of fans that watch the Indianapolis 500, and then that's it. They don't watch a whole lot of motorsports. Katherine Legge being reintroduced to everyone, and especially if she could have a really great run at the Indianapolis 500. I think that'll be huge. And one question that leads me towards Daniel, when it comes to Indianapolis 500, the month of May, that's a lot of testing and timing drivers have to commit. We know drivers like Kyle Larson doing the double with NASCAR, INDYCAR, they made the announcement for 2024 because they just know that schedule. Could this potentially impact Katherine Legge, or do you think this will even improve because now she's just going to get even more seat time, not only in IndyCar, but then just consistent going from the IndyCar to another car and so on?
I think any track time is good track time. So I think, and Katherine is very used to jumping from one car to the next. So I believe it's going to be all the track time that she has, in the month of May. Every session will be important for her, and we will see probably very likely her to progress very quickly from one session to the other. So and also she's a full-time entry in IMSA together with Sheena Monk. But I don't think that that will have a bad impact on her Indy 500 attempt. I do believe that any track time is good, and a driver with the experience of Katherine, also being a test driver in Formula One, for example, she can quickly adapt to any car in the shortest amount of time. And then really the IMSA is more of a year long effort, while in the 500 it's going to be month of May, go there, focus on that race, and then switch back to the Acura program. So I do believe that it's going to be a good program for Katherine.
And of course, we'll be following Katherine and any other news of any female racers coming to the Indianapolis 500 right here, and of course on the website Racers Behind the Helmet. Now, Daniel, overall, very light weekend of racing we had. For F4 Oceania, Chloe Chambers. How's everything going over there for the young American?
Yeah, last weekend we had the New Zealand Grand Prix, which is quite a big event. It's the flagship event of the Formula Regional Oceania Championship. It's a race that really dates back to the 1950. So a lot of history for that race. A lot of big names in the history of Formula One and INDYCAR, for example, went there in their junior years and attempted to win the New Zealand Grand Prix. And it had been not the easiest last couple of years for this series, because of course New Zealand has been impacted quite a lot by the COVID restrictions. Now it was the first year since 2020 when the New Zealand Grand Prix was back to a full grid of international drivers. 20 cars on track. Most of the most competitive drivers racing in Formula Regional machinery went there and attempted to win the New Zealand Grand Prix. And Chloe Chambers was one of them. And also we had the young Kiwi driver, Brianna Morris. She's from New Zealand. She has been the champion in Formula Ford nationally. But obviously it was a big step for Brianna, because it's a bigger car. It's slick wings. Well, she hasn't been really used to do these kind of cars, but she's progressing very quickly. Talking about Chloe, she had quite an unfortunate weekend at the New Zealand Grand Prix and Hamptons Down, which is kind of a shame, because she had a really strong season so far. She had a top 5 in the first race, and in all the races she was in the top 10. And the first race when she didn't score a top 10 was at the New Zealand Grand Prix. So that was kind of a bit disappointing for her. She had some contacts in the beginning, but came home with a P14, which is still not bad at all. And she also had some more track time in the wet because the free practice were under the rain. So everything is good for her experience. She also raced last year, as we mentioned, more than one time in W Series, which use the same cars, and so she has some knowledge of these cars, and she had to really learn all the tracks in New Zealand. But apart from the New Zealand Grand Prix, I would say that all this season has been really positive for Chloe. This weekend they are racing again at Taupo for the final round of the championship. And she was again in the top 10 earlier today in practice. So I do believe that we will see Chloe back in the top 10 in such a very competitive championship. Also, Brianna Morris was very competitive this morning. She had in FP1, she was P6, best result of the season so far. So obviously we will have to see in qualifying and in race one later on Saturday. But as I mentioned, good season for Chambers. We still have to learn what will be her plans for the upcoming season. But obviously, it's always good to have some track time in a Formula 3 regional cars, whatever she will be doing next.
And we encourage everyone be sure to visit the website racersbehindthehelmet.com. As you can see right there, Chloe Chandler, Brianna Morris in the center. We also had Asian Le Mans Series coming back. Belaine Garcia, another W Series racer who's making a start there in the Asian Le Mans Series F4 UAE. Names we've talked about before, Hamda Al-Kabasi, and of course all the latest stories, including the big one that broke right before we went on the air about Nir Marti signed with Campos Racing, Katherine Legge returning to Indy 500, and a lot going on. So definitely it's going to be really exciting. And of course, one story I know we're scrolling right there, Sophia Flores returned to FIA Formula 3. Daniel, this I think caught a lot of folks by surprise, especially considering her sports car effort going on and what we're seeing about potentially the golden era sports car racing with LMDH and renewed interest. Did this move caught you by surprise with her going to Formula 3?
Well, not really by surprise, because I knew that Sofia really was interested in trying to come back to single seaters. I had met her back in October, at the end of October last year at Mugello, where she was testing a Formula 3 car. So she always had at the back of her mind the idea of trying to come back to single seaters. She really likes the high downforce kind of driving style, which is quite still important for LMP2 prototypes. And she's been really competitive there and really fast in endurance. So I think that possibly on the long run that will be her environment. But if she had the opportunity to come back to FIA Formula 3 for one more season and possibly beyond, that's good. That's a good opportunity that she had to obviously to try to maximize. And it's going to be with PHM Racing, by Charu, a new team, a German team. So still we have to understand how that will how this team will be competitive, but it's really cool to see Sophia Flores coming back to FIA Formula 3 on the F1 ladder back after 2020. So I think at the beginning she will have to get back into the rhythm a little bit, but she had a pretty improving second half of the season when she was last there in 2020, and also was P12 in Monza at the final round as her personal best result. So I do believe that after spending a couple of years in sports cars in LMP2, the driving style is not too different from Formula 3 and the speed as well. So I think after a few rounds, when she really starts to work well with the team, we will probably see how she does in Formula 3.
Definitely going to be interesting how she does in Formula 3. And of course, once again, we remind everyone, racersbehindthehelmet.com for all the latest news. And of course, you can find them on social media. And we encourage everyone to be sure to subscribe to the Grid Network right here on YouTube. We're getting closer and closer to Daytona 500. We exceeded our goal of 500 subscribers before the Daytona 500. So help us get to 1,000 subscribers before the Indianapolis 500. Every single one of you count, and we thank you for tuning in as always, and especially our Patreon subscribers, including David, our newest one. He joins Calling the Show, Mark and Robin, invest in the Grid Network each and every month. You could to do that. Link in the video description, or if you want to do a one-time investment, buy me a coffee. You set the amount. We'll show your name here. And if you buy a coffee or invest in somebody in particular, help them cover their travel expenses, they'll thank you on the air right here on the Grid Network. And Daniel, thank you as always for being available for the show. For Daniel Zaria, Racers, the Girls Behind the Helmet, I'm Joe Samaniego. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time, and enjoy the races. Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.